and graffitiing bridges and shit. So it's, it's still focused to some extent on people with less, because it's, one of very few ways that if you don't have much money, you're able to express yourself in a way that people are forced to see. And, it's the same sort of Rage Against Society sort of stuff that appears in that sort of demographic. But
what about gender? You think graffiti writing's more with men or women, or?
That's interesting. I would wager that it's probably more men, because it's sort of risk-taking activity that tends to be more associated with men, but I don't know. That would be my assumption. It seems right to me. I mean, I don't know. We're having a shift in that sort of ideal, though, so who knows? Maybe it's expressed in the artistic expression of the downtrodden. Who knows?
Okay.
Yeah,
so how should cities best react to graffiti writings? What action should they take?
That's a big question. I mean, it depends on the writing and the location and stuff. You can't really have graffiti on public monuments or the sides of businesses, for example. Public monuments, it's just disrespectful to everybody involved. It's disrespectful to the people who see the monument. It's disrespectful to the people who made it. It's disrespectful to the people or groups of people or ideas that the monument represents. So that's out. I respect the attempt to prevent people from graffitiing on dangerous locations. I'm really not a big fan of people dying because they're trying to graffiti a bridge, an underpass on a busy freeway. Like, that's not...
Yeah.
I'm not a big supporter of that. But I do feel that it's an outlet that needs to be preserved, and it is inherently anti-organization, so it would be very difficult to for a city to allow graffiti because in certain areas, because then people would just not graffiti those areas, because the whole point is to avoid is to talk against society with this commentary. The whole point is that you're doing something you're not supposed to. So
it's like a form of rebellion, really?
Oh, it absolutely is. That's why it's expressed very frequently in cities from people who have less. It's the same as, leaving your mark on a school desk, right? Like, it's the only form of expression that you have available to you with no resources, right? Like, that's...
Or even in bathrooms, too. Have you seen that?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Absolutely. It's, leaving your mark to be noticed and forcing people to notice you, and doing that in a location where you're allowed to just isn't the same. It's not good enough. It's not the goal. So it's a hard question, and not one that I think it doesn't necessarily have an answer. I think that perhaps the appropriate answer would be to have one appropriate answer might be to have areas where punishment is less or more. So it would discourage people from tagging in certain areas and encourage people to tag in other areas without actually making it quote-unquote legal. Because then what you've done is effectively you've told people, hey, it's okay to tag over here, because over here it's only a $25 fine and over there it's a $500 fine. And so what you've done is you've basically social engineered a solution to making tagging legal, because it's not legal but it effectively is, because basically what you've done is say, hey, it costs $25 to paint this wall over here. And that might be one way to go about it. I'm not sure how effective that would be, but, just kind of brainstorming here, that's what just came to mind.
Okay. So to follow up on that question, where is it okay and not okay for graffiti writers to display their writings?
I think I've pretty much answered that, but to reiterate, any locations that are not in use, any locations that are not dangerous, any locations that are not offensive, get the okay. Any locations that are used by a large number of people or have emotional investment or monetary investment from people or persons or ideas, it can get a little waffly. It can get a little more complicated.
When you hear the word street art, what is your initial thoughts?
Street art to me means the idea of murals as opposed to like tagging, graffiti writing. It leans more towards real artistry with it. So painting a picture as opposed to writing a name. Think murals done with spray cans as opposed to, acrylics, wall paint, That's what that one means to me.
In your own words, what is the difference between street art and graffiti writing?
Graffiti writing is literal writing, and street art is, pictures. I guess street art could include writing as well, but I think graffiti writing, tagging, includes pretty much, it excludes art to a significant degree. Excludes not art, excludes pictures, excludes imagery, and is almost exclusively the actual writing as a stylized form of expression in art, as opposed to being both about the writing and the picture. So then street art would be the graffiti that includes any sort of artistic, visual, non-writing things, and could theoretically also include writing.
Okay. And the last question is, what actions can cities and graffiti writers take to change the perspectives on graffiti?
Stop fucking putting swastikas in your tags. I mean, seriously, come on, man. So the first one is stop putting offensive things in your... I know you're trying to get a reaction, but Jesus Christ, dude, come on, man. And the second one is stop tagging things that are valuable because you're upset at society. I mean, just because you destroy private property doesn't mean you're harming anybody other than the people who produce that private property. You're not harming the establishment by destroying a statue. What you're doing is you're harming the people who created that statue, the poor workers who have to clean it up. It's like an incredibly misguided attempt. It's, using society creates a scapegoat and waves it in your face and says, hey, look, here's a scapegoat, and you jump on the scapegoat and beat the shit out of it instead of getting upset with society. That's what tagging monuments and, the fronts of buildings are. That's... If you could just stop doing that, graffiti would be much more publicly acceptable. On the other hand, society can play its part by not getting upset about art on buildings. Some graffiti that I've seen taken down has been very beautiful, but because it's graffiti and not a licensed mural, suddenly it's unacceptable and is whitewashed over. Then you get a war of people whitewashing it, and somebody writes red on it in red paint, and they paint over it with red, and they paint white on it in white, and they paint over it with white, and this war goes back and forth between some incredibly amused graffiti artist and some incredibly annoyed poor government worker who has to deal with their shit.
Well, I think that's it. That's all my questions for today.
Sweet.
Appreciate your time, and thanks again, Ben.
Yeah, no problem.